Look at what Asaph writes in verse 1. He says, I cried out to God for help. Would you underline the word cried? I cried out to God to hear me. When I was in distress, I sought the Lord. At night, I stretched out untiring hands, and my soul refused to be comforted. I remember you, O God, and I groaned. I mused, and my spirit grew faint. You kept my eyes from closing. I was too troubled to speak. There's an intensity in these verses. In the Hebrew, whenever something is mentioned twice, it's for emphasis. He says, I cried out to God for help. I cried out to the Lord to hear me. That word cried is the Hebrew word for renan. It's used 500 times in the Old Testament. And it literally means to roar like a bear. You see, in the Old Testament, in the Hebrew, a lot of times the words are graphic words, okay? Like anger. The word anger, it literally means to flare your nostrils, okay? When you get angry, you flare your nostrils. Well, the word used here means it's not just a little sobbing that's going on. It's wailing, okay? He's making a noise here. And he's saying, I cried out to God. I cried out to him. And when I was in distress, that word means to be filled with grief. I sought the Lord. At night, I stretched out untiring hands. My soul refused to be comforted. He cannot find peace. He can't find comfort. He continues to lay awake at night. I remembered, O God, I groaned, I mused. You kept my eyes from closing. And then he says, I was at a loss for words. I was too troubled to speak. The first thing that you and I need to do when we go through those times of trouble is to cry out to God. And I don't just mean quietly. I mean literally having some PG-13 conversations with God. You know what I'm talking about? I can remember one time going down the freeway and going through this time and just pounding the dashboard of my car saying, God, where are you? I need to hear from you. I need to know that you're still for me. I've used a phrase before that the real God can only help the real you. And when you're real before God and you cry out to God and you let him know what's going on inside of you, the real God comes and he ministers to you. Asaph begins this psalm by saying, cry out to God. And then the second thing he does in verse 5 and 6 is that he considers God's past blessings. Look at what he does. He says, I thought about the former days, the years of long ago. I remembered my songs in the night. My heart mused and my spirit inquired. He's recalling God's past faithfulness. He's remembering that God was at work before and he will work again. Apparently he was listening to worship music in the middle of the night. Verse 6 says, I remembered my songs in the night. My heart mused and was inquired. Oftentimes in my journal during these times, I begin my journal by putting the word yesterday on the top of my journal. And I'll just think about God's faithfulness yesterday in my life. How he answered prayer. How he met my needs. And it's amazing when you go through times like this, your prayer literally is, God, give us this day our daily bread. Meet our needs for today. And when I stop to take the time to recall God's past blessings, it gives us peace. It gives us hope for the future. It gives us promise that God will take care of us again. The God who's been faithful, as we've sung about this morning, will be faithful in the future. We need to consider God's past blessings. A third life lesson that Asaph talks about here in verses 7 through 9 is that he says, I need to confront God with my tough questions. I need to bring those tough questions and those things that I'm wrestling with to God. He gives 6 questions. He asks 6 questions of God right here in verses 6 through 9. He says, will the Lord reject forever? Will he never show his favor again? Has his unfailing love vanished forever? Has his promise failed for all time? Has God forgotten to be merciful? Has he in his anger withheld his compassion? What tough question would you like to ask God? Don't be afraid to do that. Don't let those questions, those tough questions that you have, turn you away from God in bitterness and resentment and disappointment. Allow those tough questions to drive you more and more towards God. Asaph says, will the Lord reject forever? Will He never show His favor again? Asaph is wrestling with, are my best days behind me? Will God ever show His favor again to me? Have you been there? Have you asked those questions? A while back, I went to a luncheon with a speaker named John Ortberg. And the pastors that were hosting this luncheon, one of the pastors got up and said the other pastor who kind of organized the whole event and brought this whole thing together couldn't be there because his 20-year-old son had been in an accident. He said his son had a real heart to help homeless and hurting people, and he would carry food vouchers in his wallet for, food, Burger King, McDonald's, or whatever. And as he was driving down the road, he saw this man on the side of the road holding a sign, and he passed him and he wanted to help him. He had a real heart of compassion for this man, and he went up and he was making a legal U-turn when the guy behind him didn't see him. Plowed right into the back of this young man's car, flipped his car over several times. This young man was in a coma, paralyzed and learning to speak all over again. And the pastor said, he wanted to be there, but he had a greater ministry and a more important ministry, and that was to his 20-year-old son right now. When I heard that story, I wrestled with why? Why? Here's a young man who's trying to make a difference. He's trying to reach out. He has a heart for the hurting, and he's trying to do something about it, and he gets plowed, blindsided. We need to learn to confront God. And I know that's a strong word, to confront God with those tough questions. But sometimes and oftentimes the questions we bring to God are the why questions, right? God, why? Why did you allow this? Why are you allowing this right now? Why am I going through this? Why am I struggling? Why am I suffering? Why am I losing my home? Why have I lost my church? Or I lost a dream that I believed that brought us to Tracy? Why? What I've learned is that God wants to move us from the why questions to the what. What is it, God, that you want to say to me? What is it that you want to teach me during this time? What is it that what is the work that you want to do in my life? And you see, when you begin asking the what questions and you say to God, God, nothing's off limits. If there's something that's hindering and blocking my relationship to you, God, and to other people, God, I need to see it. I need you to reveal it to me. My mother-in-law recently sent me an article by Phil Vischer. I don't know if that name means anything to you, but Phil Vischer was the creator and designer of VeggieTales. And 3 years ago, VeggieTales went bankrupt, went under. It's no longer. And right around this time, when Phil was struggling with why, God, and what are you doing, and so forth, he got a call asking to speak at Biola University's commencement graduation as the speaker. He declined, but he said, I will speak for your winter commencement, and so he had to keep that commitment. And when he got up to speak, he said this, I gave a 20-minute talk at Biola that I thought would be nominated for the worst commencement speech in history. He said, what would I have to say to these aspiring students who wanted to go out and change the world? You know what he said? He said this, whatever you're dreaming about doing for God, whatever you're longing for, whatever impact you hope to have, let it go. Kill it. Drop it.